All right, and we are back with a look during conference play, headed towards March Madness look at women's college basketball. And what's really interesting about women's college basketball this season is the circle of really outstanding teams has continued to widen. There are many years where there was only one real national championship contender, whether it was UConn or South Carolina more recently. And then you could see that group of plausible national championship contenders kind of grow a little bit bigger. And it was helped by really famous players breaking out, playing for outstanding teams, And if you're just a casual fan, so, think about it. You probably knew about UConn a few years ago, you knew about South Carolina coming into last year. You got familiar with Caitlin Clark and Iowa and LSU. Well, now this year, there's almost 10 teams that are famous for the right reasons. Famous because they have big star breakout players and or coaches and are right up there going to get one or two seats contending for the national title. And you can probably name them off the top of your head. South Carolina and UConn and UCLA and USC and Notre Dame and Texas and LSU, the defending champions. And these are all viable contenders. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a group of teams that are probably not capturing your attention as much as they should or are underrated for one or more reasons and who could make really dangerous tournament teams. Number one on this list is blindingly obvious, but maybe not as obvious as it should be. As far as I can tell, UConn is either the best or the second best team in the entire country, something like 50 points better than average. Last year, I thought UConn had been maybe so good for so long that they were getting a little underrated, underappreciated. And the questions about UConn last year were their schedule strength and, for the past couple of years, injuries. Well, just last weekend, UConn went into South Carolina and ended South Carolina's 71-game home court winning streak by spanking South Carolina 87-59. I've never seen a Staley coached team play like it was slow, like they were uncoordinated. UConn dismantled them. There's an real interesting reason for this. Everybody knows about Paige Beckers, but finally, AZ Fudd has come into her own. Paige Beckers tried to recruit AZ Fudd to UConn something like 5 years ago. She went to the Fudd family house and played a PowerPoint where she had edited pictures of herself passing the ball into pictures of AZ Fudd scoring and said, "Come with me to UConn." And in 3.5 years of them, the recruiting pitch worked, but in 3.5 years of them being together at UConn, they had only played in 35 games together. Well, they're playing together now at an extraordinarily high level, and Sarah Strong, who is averaging 16 points and 8 rebounds a game, and by some measures is the best player in the entire country, is playing with them. And so now you have UConn number 5 only in the U.S. In the ESPN power rankings, number 2 seed only in the recent bracketologies, and is now plus 370 to win the national title, where South Carolina is plus 225, and they just beat them by more than 30 points. UConn should be, in everybody's mind, despite how great a bunch of other teams have played, should be at the very, very top of your list for national championship contenders. The number two on this list that I'm presenting to you, that should also be in your list of national championship contenders as a much better value play, is Kansas State. Kansas State is a top 10 team, but you know that the odds for national championship winning the title kind of fall off a cliff after 7 teams, and they're basically like the 8th team. I mean, all the teams I mentioned before, like USC and UCLA and Texas and Notre Dame, they're up around, plus 700. LSU's plus 2,000. Kansas State's at plus 5,000 to win the national title right now. But they were leading the Big 12 most of this year. They're a fantastic offensive team. They're one of the top teams in the country in shooting 2s and shooting 3s, and so effective field goal percentage. They're the 3rd best team in the country. They have an outstanding assist to turnover ratio, like a UConn level, 1.73 assists per turnovers, because they're getting great guard play and getting great play on the perimeter. They kind of remind me of Marquette in the men's game a little bit in that they rebound just enough to keep everything else moving, but Their key player inside, Aoki Lee, averaging 16 points, the fifth best shooter in the entire country, uh, broke her foot in January. So she's been out. Now, they've been hanging in there. They've been treading water, but without any presence in the middle, it's been tough for them to do anything. And they've kind of lost all their chance at kind of national attention. But with Aoki Lee coming back, hopefully coming back this weekend in a huge game against Baylor, they're a formidable presence up and down the court, and their perimeter play is fantastic. And they got as good a shot as any team in the top 8 or top 10 teams winning a championship, because those teams, again, are bunched together, but they're plus 5,000 to win. So keep Kansas State in mind and watch for their injured star to return and have recovered from injury. Now, I want to mention a couple of teams that are not at that level, who are like top 20 teams, but who are going to get mid-level, probably mid-level seeds in the tournament. And what's interesting in the women's game is that while it's very hard because the talent hasn't quite dispersed to the point where there are, let's say, 50 great teams in the country, there are 20 or 30 really, really good teams in the country. And so, like, your kind of also-rans in power conference teams are quite capable of pulling off second-round upsets. When you get like an 8 versus a 1 or a 7 versus a 2, these are teams that could be in position to do that, get a win, and then challenge or contend for a second win. One I want to mention is Mississippi. Mississippi is, amazingly enough, grabbing offensive rebounds on 42.5% of their missed shots. That's fifth best in the country. At the same time, they're stealing the ball on 14.6% of opponent possessions. That's seventh in the country. Now, there's no law of physics that says if you grab a lot of offensive rebounds that you can't get a lot of steals, but those things don't often go hand in hand. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to do that, and that's what Mississippi does. They grind away on defense, pressure the opponents, and then hit the boards. This is an astounding combination. You may have seen Mrs. Coach on the sideline. She's very animated. Yolette McPhee McGuinn, known as Coach Yo. She's very quotable. She's fantastic. Under her watch, they've gone from 263rd in the country to 5th in offensive rebounding, like I just mentioned. It's an outstanding combination that maximizes possessions. Another team that maximizes possessions through constantly pressuring their opponents is Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, 14th in the country in steal percentage. And, of course, you've heard by now about Michaela Blake's, who scored 53 points, then 55 points to break her own freshman record. Combination of turning the ball over relentlessly, plus a player who can dump 50 points on an opponent, seize control of a game, makes them an instant, plausible giant killer. Okay, now it's time for Nailed It, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Nailed It is always a happy time on this show because it means we got something right. And on Super Bowl Sunday, I was sitting there in a room full of people. We had predicted that Jon Batiste would sing the national anthem in less than 2 minutes. He gave a very concise, he's the maestro, right? He could play any instrument. He could have dragged out a tuba and a piano, played them both at the same time on his head, and could drag this whole thing out, but he didn't. I was watching my stopwatch. He got through the song in a very concise, elegant fashion. He gets to the end, and he sings, "And the land of the free," and he's way ahead of pace. And I'm like, this is it. And then he sings again, "And the land of the free," and adds a little piano. And then he sings for a third freaking time, "And the land of the free," while he's doodling on the piano. And at that point, my watch was ticking right down towards 2 minutes. The room full of people I had forced to watch this with me and keep time with me all started laughing at me. I thought it was over. And in fact, it was very close. And in fact, there were no official results posted for like 2 days. But it turns out, despite Jon Batiste dragging out the anthem, it was under 2 minutes. And that continues our streak of correct national anthem times dating back to my pick of Carly Pierce also being under a couple of years ago. So look, Underdogs, we tell you about the national anthem. We tell you about March Madness. We tell you Godzilla's going to win an Oscar. What can't you come to us for? We will nail it again and again.